There is an old adage that one should never meet their heroes, because you will only be disappointed. According to a plethora of anecdotes found around the web, this old saying certainly seems to ring true. But what if the heroes in question were ones you dreamt up yourself? This is the story of Tulpamancery, writers who got too caught up in their tales, and the mysterious sightings of comic book anti-hero John Constantine that have spanned more than a decade. And this is It Came from the Internet.
Welcome back to the podcast for people who take everything they see on the internet too seriously. I'm Johnny.
And I'm Shane.
This week we are talking about what happens, I guess, when fiction becomes reality, but more specifically, what happens when you quite literally meet your heroes.
Ooh.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. Some housekeeping. Well, actually, there isn't really any housekeeping. I was just going to do the usual and ask at the start of the episode for people to leave a review on Apple or wherever you can leave reviews, and specifically Spotify, a rating. I know ratings and reviews help greatly on Apple. I assume they have the same impact on other sites.
I assume so.
Though as it stands, because I think this is the first time we're recording where like there's the feed's actually out there on podcast apps, and as of yet it's still actually not on Google Podcasts, so I hope that's not a problem.
Oh yeah, hopefully you're listening to us there now.
Yeah, but it's on most of the other ones anyway, so if you can leave a review or just a rating on any of them, do that, and follow us on all the social medias, I guess, that I've yet to set up. But the rating and review is the most important part, because like I said, and you know, we're getting close to the possible end now. I'm only giving this like 8 episodes, and I'll pull the plug if we're not where I want to be by then.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I keep saying that, but I don't actually know where that is I want it to be. Like, I have no, like, maybe like some big sponsorship deal or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll know when we're there. I'll know if after 8 episodes, if it feels like I'm where I want it to be, we'll continue. But if not, I'm pulling the plug.
But you don't know what that what barrier is.
I don't really know what that is. No, I'll know when it comes.
Yeah. You'll know in your soul. You'll get that feeling and you go, yeah, this is worth it. But on the other side of it, I think you're really enjoying this. You're constantly texting me like, oh, I just thought of a cool idea for an episode. I was just reading this cool story. We do an episode on this. Like you're getting really excited about it.
Well, I feel like I kind of have to be, or I just won't do it.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I kind of have to keep myself motivated by looking up stuff and getting ideas. As well, because like we haven't really talked about this on any episodes yet, but as you well know, we kind of have to do this. There's a certain interdimensional being is making us do this.
Who's that?
I was just going to leave that hanging and not.
Yeah.
I remember for a while on Disaster Artists, we had the joke that it was like a gypsy curse that forced us into the bunker or something.
I'd forgotten about that. No, it's the seeker of knowledge himself is the one who...
Yeah, we should acknowledge that too, because people are asking about Disaster Artists if we're still doing it. And we are, but there are more pressing matters.
Yeah, because the whole point of Disaster Artists is to keep people in knowledge of like how to survive certain disasters, and we're currently in a situation here, and this is our solution to it. So that's we're surviving here.
See, we're still in the bunker. We're still recording from the bunker, even though we totally acknowledge that we do this podcast remotely and have done with Disaster Artists for the last like few years now. But we still pretend we're in a bunker. But I'm not sure where I was going with that. It's just we kind of can't. We've never really kept our in-universe story straight on whether we're actually in a bunker or not.
And that might Just be intentional.
It's all part of the ploy. But anyway, we have this computer down here in the bunker, and somebody, I'm not pointing any fingers, but somebody was trying to download like an old classic, their favourite Sasha Grey film from 2005. Maybe I know too much about it, but we ended up with this, I guess you'd call it a computer virus, and it turns out it's this interdimensional being called Gorgon, I would have pronounced it. Yeah, Gorgon is something. Is that the Greek? Is that like Medusa? Is she a Gorgon? Is that what they're called?
Oh, I've no idea.
Anyway, that's besides the point. But yeah, apparently this creature, he travels from universe to universe, just like learning everything about the world, each world. And when he pretty much learns everything, he just destroys the place and leaves. But because he got stuck on the internet, most of what he knows about this universe is bullshit. So we've made the agreement with him that if we try and help him out to deduct what's BS and what isn't, he will leave our universe alone. So that's why we're doing it. We're trying to save the world, right?
Yeah, by distinguishing what's real and what's not on the internet.
But yeah, we're doing it to save the universe. But still, if we're not popular enough after 8 episodes, we'll still abandon it.
I mean, yeah, it's not worth the effort, and the universe can just go fuck itself at that point.
So, but that's why people have to rate and review, because the universe is at stake, I guess. That's a good way to hold them hostage.
Yeah, and his full title is Gorgon, the Seeker of Knowledge, isn't it?
Gorgon, the Seeker of Knowledge and Destroyer of Worlds. Yeah. He can't talk.
He's kind of like Brainiac.
Sorry?
I said he's kind of like Brainiac from Superman, but far more sinister.
That's a good segue, without you even knowing that you've done a segue into what we're actually talking about today.
Because I don't know what our topic is.
Well, you did mention Superman.
Yes.
A fictional comic book hero. You don't know what we're talking about today, but being familiar with the internet, as most people our age are at this point, I'm sure you've come across, on your time online, you've come across plenty of accounts of people who claimed to have seen or encountered like a paranormal creature, what some people might call a fictional creature.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So not aliens and ghosts, because like those, or a lot of people at least, will entertain an argument for their existence. But I mean like people who claim to have seen mermaids and fucking werewolves and stuff.
Or unicorns, that's a big one. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen an account of somebody claiming legitimately to see a unicorn. Have you? Yeah.
No. I was just trying to think of. I suppose Bigfoot's a big cryptid.
Yeah. Bigfoot again. Not that I believe it, but like I put that more in the aliens and ghosts category. Whereas,
okay,
like,
yeah, I think its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like when you start getting to like mermaids and unicorns and stuff, but there are people that would claim that they've seen them.
Yeah.
But have you ever come across any accounts of people who have claimed to have had an encounter with a fictional character?
No. Well,
first of all, actually, kind of off topic, but have you watched The Sandman, the Netflix series?
I've only watched the first 2 episodes, but I know the story. I've listened to the audiobook.
Right.
Which is really cool, actually. I recommend it to anybody who's listening.
Yeah, I watched a few episodes of the series. It's good. I read the initial first, maybe, I know, a couple of volumes of the comic book run, yeah. So I know the story, so I'm not really pushed to go back to it.
Yeah, I got that.
Because it's like Sin City almost. It's very like, well, some of it they changed a good few things, but it is for the most part it's a very accurate adaptation, and you kind of really don't benefit from. If you've read the books recently, you don't benefit from watching it. Like
from so far what I've seen, it's almost word for word. Like scene. It's a few small changes, but pretty much. One
big change that I was very disappointed with is the absence of John Constantine, or Constantine, depending on
yes,
American or British, I guess. Yeah, so Constantine appears in the comic book, but he is swapped out for Joanna Constantine for the series, who isn't just a gender swapped version of John. She is a character in the comics as well, but she's an ancestor. But they just met Joanna for the entire thing. The reason apparently being that there's a rights dispute because HBO Max are doing a Constantine show.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't want a new actor, and they've already had him in another series. That it was just going to be too confusing to have like fucking 3 Constantine actors. But I was still disappointed because I'm a big fan of that character. I've always liked it.
He's a great character.
But it did inspire me to go back reading the Hellraiser comics, which are his own series of comics. Sorry, I mean Hellblazer. Hellraiser is another franchise entirely. And because I've only read like the first volume, say. And actually, you know what? We should probably explain. Well, I always do this where I just assume everybody knows these characters and stuff. So John Constantine, for people who, a lot of people might have seen the Keanu Reeves movies, so actually do have a fairly good idea. But he's a DC comic book character. He first appeared in Swamp Thing in 1985, and the main man credited with creating him is Alan Moore, but there are like 5 people who really created him. Because he was kind of like he came into Swamp Thing in quite a small role at first, and then other people added on story to him. So they all it happens with comic book characters. A lot of people come in 5 years later and give them backstory that becomes part of the character, so they're credited as a creator. Like, I think it was in Wolverine like that.
Yeah, he was a villain in Hulk.
Yeah, and they done nothing with him for like 3 years after that appearance.
Then he was developed, and then they made him a hero, and it was like, oh, he wasn't a villain. I can't remember whether he was brainwashed or it was a misunderstanding. Or, you know, they kind of went for a turnaround. No, he wasn't a villain. He was actually working for someone or under the influence of somebody or something like a.
Yeah. But Constantine, anyway, kind of mostly Alan Moore's creation. And he's always been depicted as a cynical but like fun, kind of witty working class, Liverpool lad, working class Liverpool lad. And he's an occult detective and con man and just general rapscallion, I guess. I don't know.
That's a really good way to describe it.
But and it's his Hellraiser series, or Hellblazer, sorry. And it's a really good series. He tends to like his adventures kind of bring him around the world, and he's not always. I think he operates out of London mainly, but he pops up in Ireland in comic books and all. Anyway, really good series. And his absence in The Sandman was very disappointing, but it was nice to like give me a reason to go back reading them. But I read the Hellblazer comic books years ago, so I can't reread. Once I've read a comic book, like I'll never go back to it.
Yeah, I get you.
So what I normally do when I forget where I am is I go on Wikipedia and read through the fictional character biography.
Oh, of course.
And once I get to a point where, okay, I don't think I've got up to this part, I'll find what issue that storyline starts and then start from there. So I went on Wikipedia and I was having like a good browse through the John Constantine. Or Constantine. I keep switching the two.
I would say Constantine. Yeah.
Sorry?
I would say Constantine.
Yeah. I think it's Tyne though. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So I was having a good scroll through there. And, you know, it contains all the stuff. Have you ever gone through a fictional character's Wikipedia entry?
Way too many times.
It's great. It's great fun. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. I'm always looking up characters.
Have you ever been on John Constantine's one?
No.
Okay. Well, it's like all the other ones. You know, it has the publishing history, his fictional biography, his appearance in other media. But at the very bottom of the page, there's one piece of information that you won't find on Batman or Superman's entry. And that's and it's a very small entry. And it's just called Real Life Sightings.
That's awesome.
See, it would appear that John Constantine might not be a fictional character after all.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, well, now this is a weird one. And now this isn't a huge topic. It's going to be a quick enough episode. But when I came across this, I was just like, oh my God, we have to talk about this. Before I even read any further, because again, it's a tiny entry. But I looked up some other stuff that kind of relates to it. But I was just like, I just want to have a conversation about this because it's so funny and weird and cool. So yeah, there's people out there that claim to have seen John Constantine in real life. Not just random people though. The first person who claims to have encountered him was no other than Alan Moore himself.
I knew you were going to say that.
That's because you know Alan Moore. You're a comic book fan.
Yeah.
He told Wizard magazine in 1993, one day I was in Westminster in London. This was after we had introduced the character, and I was sitting in a sandwich bar. All of a sudden, up the stairs came John Constantine. He was wearing a trench coat, a short cut. He didn't even look exactly like Sting. He looked exactly like John Constantine. He looked at me, stared me straight in the eyes, smiled, nodded, almost conspiratorially, and then just walked off around the corner to the other part of the snack bar. I sat there and thought, should I go around the corner and see if that really is him? Or should I just eat my sandwich and leave? I opted for the latter. I thought it was the safest. I'm not making any claims to anything. I'm just saying that it happened. Strange little story.
Wow, that's cool.
Now this...
Was that the first cosplayer? Like, you know.
yeah. Like 1993, it's like, there was no cosplayers in 1993, were there?
I'm sure there's people who dressed up as like Batman and Superman, like, and Spider-Man, like the big ones, but not like, no, I date very few people who are like, oh, I'm going to dress up as John Constantine.
Yeah, that's more like if you were going to cosplay in 1993, it certainly wasn't as John Constantine.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I don't know enough about the history of cosplay, but I suppose there's just some random guy just thought, that's a cool style, I'm going to copy that. Doesn't necessarily mean they're cosplaying. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's the difference between cosplay and like dressing up as a comic book character at a Halloween party?
Yeah, that's it. But I suppose a character like Constantine he's in street clothes. You know what I mean? He's not in a blue and red leotard. You know what I mean? Or spandex.
He typically is just wearing a trench coat, maybe a shirt and tie underneath. But it's the
blonde hair.
The blonde hair is a big one, and he's usually unshaven.
Yeah.
Not a beard or anything, but just he shaves twice a week at best. Like, he's that kind of guy.
And good looking, but like every man good looking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not Brad Pitt, but you know, then the pub, the girls might look at him a little bit and go, "Oh, he's a nice looking lad." You know, he's
Brad Pitt would have been a very good Constantine.
He actually would have been a really good Constantine. Yeah. in 1993, if they'd made a movie in 1993.
Well, now this actually wouldn't be Moore's only encounter with John Constantine.
Okay.
So this one's a bit funnier. Years later, while attending a magical ritual, which might explain a lot here, Moore says John Constantine stepped out of the darkness and spoke to him this time. Do you want to know what he said?
Dude, you've done too many mushrooms.
He said, "I'll tell you the ultimate secret of magic. Any cunt could do it." And then he went away. Now, you could put this off. Well, actually, first of all, we should mention, you made a joke there about too many mushrooms. Yeah. Alan Moore is very famously, he's very famously a bit odd.
Yeah, he is it.
And he's also a massive fan of drugs, at least psychedelics.
Yeah.
And I think he is pagan. Like, he believes in magic.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff. He is one of the best comic book writers that ever lived. He's a great writer in general. Like, he's a very intelligent man, all that. But he is he's a strange creature.
Yeah, he's not a ball. A slight aside, I remember reading an article about, it must be 10 years ago. It was when Watchmen movie was coming out, and I read an article with him, and it was basically him explaining why he'd never go see the movie and all this kind of stuff. And basically the journalist was trying to like get to the bottom of, because he's famously says he's never seen a film or adaptation of anything he's written. Like he refuses.
Well,
he doesn't see the point.
I think he's seen one. I think he's seen The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That was the first and last.
Yes.
That might be the reason he doesn't anymore.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so they were trying to get him to like give them sound bites and all that kind of stuff. And instead he spent the whole interview talking about his 100,000 page novel he was writing.
I remember you telling me about this.
And he hasn't figured out how to bound it or anything yet, but he's right. His mission was to write like the longest novel ever written or something like this. And the whole interview was him just going on about this particular story, and I couldn't even tell you what the story was about or anything. I can't remember. It's so long ago since I read this article.
Thing, I just remember.
Yeah, because I wrote my thesis in college on the adaptation of comic books to movies, and then how technology with CGI and stuff was changing, because how they're totally different mediums and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I used his article as like references and all that kind of stuff. But Jesus, like he was just going on about this massive novel he was writing, and he literally had isolated himself in his house for like 8 years to just write this novel. And yeah, he's just an oddball, but
yeah,
pretty cool guy and a great writer.
He seems really cool, and he seems like a very nice person. Like I saw, there's a great video of him when the Occupy movement was going on, Occupy Wall Street and all that. And it was some like piece for The Guardian or something, and they brought him to like just meet people at Occupy. They were all wearing, because he wrote V for Vendetta and created the V mask, or the artist he worked with did, or whatever. And like, you know, they were all wearing it, and the reporter points out how like he was clearly just unhappy about that, because, you know, it's Occupy Wall Street, but they're all wearing a mask that Time Warner gets like all the profits from every sale, and he doesn't, because he relinquished the rights or whatever. But she was saying like he was just way too nice to like bring it up with anybody. And loads of people are telling him how much they loved the Watchmen movie and stuff, not the comic book, but the movie, and he just like was too nice to say, well, I had nothing got to do with that. He was like, oh, glad you liked it, even though he hated it was even being adapted. He's just too nice to
that's cool,
be dismissive of anyone.
Yeah, because he's often given out about bad adaptations of his stuff, but it's nice that when it's the average fan, he's just like, oh, good, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, his problem is with the producers of it, not the fans.
Yeah, that's good. At least he doesn't blame the fans for it.
And he also like seems like a very principled man, considering he like doesn't like when they adapt his work, he has his name taken off it and doesn't take any of the profits. He sends them all to the other people that worked on the comic book.
Wow.
Because his thing is like, yeah, if I'm going to like give out about them and have my name taken off, I'd be a hypocrite if I still accepted the check.
Yeah. That's fair.
Now, it's probably not a lot of money because, as you know, with comic book creators, they don't retain the rights to their
paid
stuff.
that much. Yeah. But I suppose where he's getting money is when something like, say, the Watchmen movie came out, the sales of the graphic novel probably blew up, and he made money off that. Like,
yeah.
That's fair.
He's even had his name taken off some comic books. Like, I think, is it Miracle Man or something? The 3rd volume, I have it, and like it's like art by Dave Gibbons or whoever, and then written by the author. Like when he has
really?
Yeah. Apparently he's done that a few times where he's just taken the name the author.
It's like what is it? Is it Walter Smith, or was it Smitty, or
Walter Smitty or something? Yeah.
I can't remember what it was.
The director,
movie.
Yeah, the fake,
yeah.
The director name. You
Walter,
take.
I feel like Walter Smitty's wrong, but also it's something like that.
Doesn't matter too much.
Yeah,
I think the point point is that Alan Moore is he's just a strange duck. Like, that's the,
Yeah.
And so the fact that like somebody like Alan Moore claims to have seen Constantine twice isn't that unusual.
Yeah.
But where things get a little weirder is that he's not alone, and other writers and artists who worked on Hellblazer make very similar claims.
Really?
Yeah. So British comic book writer Jamie Delano claims to have encountered Constantine in a British museum once. And then Peter Milligan, also a British comic book writer, saw him at a party in 2009 and followed him. So I'm going up to the roof, apparently, and followed him up to see if it was him. I loved it, to see if it was him, as if like he's just a real person. And when he got to the roof, there was nobody up there.
That's mad.
And one of my favourites, so American writer Brian Azzarello, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's pretty big. Have you ever read or came across 100 Bullets?
Oh, I haven't read it, but I've seen I've seen it on the shelves.
Cool. I've read a handful of it, but yeah, it's pretty cool. But he read that. He saw Constantine in a bar in Chicago and was so startled by his experience that he left, saying afterwards, "The thing about John is the last thing you'd want to be is his friend."
Yeah. But it's like, it's almost like, it sounds to me from what you've given me there is they have, as writers and stuff, because obviously like comic book characters, they look a little bit different from depending who draws them and all that kind of stuff, but they have in their heads of what they think he looks like.
Yeah.
And that's who they saw. And it freaked the shit out of them, because it's not just someone in the clothes and everything, but it's the facial features, it's the mannerisms, it's everything that you imagined he looked like.
Yeah.
And then you see that in reality. I get how that would freak you out.
Oh yeah, it would.
Because, if like, say you go to a con and there's like a guy in a really cool Batman accurate Batman costume, you're like, oh, that's really cool, but he's not Batman. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because he doesn't look like how you think Batman should look like his jaw isn't the right like shape or whatever. Like you just think, you're like cool costume, not oh my god, that's Batman.
Do as far as comic book characters go, he does have more of a distinct, like, I know what you mean, because like Peter Parker, like nobody even knows what Peter Parker looks like in the comic books because he's just generic looking.
Yeah.
And he always looks different, depending on who's drawn him. Like some artists, like the way they draw a character, like out of costume anyway, can change over the years. Like the only thing that stays the same is like like the fact that, say, Matt Murdock, Daredevil, is like always kind of has red hair. Or sometimes he's just blonde, actually. But a character like Constantine kind of has always... He definitely has a distinct enough look that has always remained.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But yeah, you show me a picture of like Bruce Wayne beside, I don't know, Steve Rogers. I wouldn't know which is meant to be which. Like, it just depends on... Unless it just happens that it's from a comic by an artist that I've seen. I read another issue that he done,
Yeah.
Because I haven't read comic books in years. If you showed me pictures of whoever is currently drawing both those characters, I won't be able to tell which was which. Like,
I know what you mean. Yeah, without seeing them in context. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you're dismissing the theory, I feel like, that it could have been a real John Constantine, are you?
No. That's where I'm going with it, is that they were freaked out so much that they saw how they thought it, like that, like the point where they went, oh my god, that is him. That makes me think, oh, okay, so is there some supernatural thing going on where they're writing these stories because of some mysticism from his adventures that he's actually having, that they're witnessing them? Or is it he's from another dimension or another universe, and his adventures in his universe have become fictionalized in our, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That kind of thing. So I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I've never come across it before.
Yeah.
As in, I don't think I've ever heard any encounters with another fictional character.
Yeah.
But, maybe I will get to some later. But right now, let's focus on John Constantine and some of the theories that explain his encounters.
Yeah.
One is that British occult writer Thomas Sleman, the theory is that he was actually one of the inspirations for the character. And so all these mysterious encounters might just be people seeing him.
Yeah.
But he actually doesn't really look, I think he was more, because he's like a paranormal investigator and occultist.
Yeah.
And he's also from Liverpool. Just his personality was more the basis for the initial John Constantine, not how he looked. This guy kind of looks more like Gart Maranghi. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I thought you were going to say when you were telling me the first story of Alan Moore, of like, when you went, and guess who saw him. I thought you were going to then tell me a story about Alan Moore saying he based him on a real person he met in his life. Right. Who he claims he's like, this is a real guy. Obviously the name John Constantine I made up, but I couldn't tell you his real name, but this is what he does for a living.
Yeah,
and the supernatural is real, or, I thought that's where it was going to be, where you were going to go with it.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, with Alan Moore, I could just as easily have gone that route.
Yeah.
But no, this guy as well, Thomas Lemon, he says that he wasn't actually the inspiration, that he didn't. Him and Alan Moore wouldn't have known each other at the time. I think they've known each other since. But another theory, of course, which alluded to in Moore's own statement, is that, because Constantine's physical appearance was based on Sting, the front man of the Police, not the wrestler. Though that'd be really funny. So they could just be encountering Sting.
Oh, yeah. I'm not realizing.
Because this is actually another interesting thing about John Constantine. He's unique in that, or at least he was unique. So first of all, for people that aren't aware, he mainly, his Hellblazer series appeared under the Vertigo publication, which is DC Comics, suppose they're more adult orientated universe. And within that continuity, his character aged in real time, which isn't normal in comics, which would make him actually roughly the same age as Sting. So whatever period because Moore's sighting was 1993, the most recent one was like 2009. So if they were actually seeing Sting, he'd be aging the same way Constantine would have been in the Vertigo universe.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, because the way it tends to go, like if you pick up, it's a while since I've read a new comic book, but they used to refer to like, say like the silver age of comics that came out in like the 60s, to those characters that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Not like 50, 60 years ago. It was always because I know, like if you pick last time I read an Avengers comics, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I remember, and I was probably reading comics in graphic novels that were about 3 to 5 years old, and like there was one where Iron Man went back in time to like say year 1 of Iron Man, and it was set about 10 years earlier, even though year 1 of Iron Man was like post Vietnam
or something.
So it was like his costume that it was in the 60s or the 70s, but to him he was like, it was 10 years ago. I drank way more.
It's the same as like the Punisher used to be a Vietnam vet, then he was a Gulf War vet, then he was a Gulf War II vet, and I think now he's just a special ops vet. It's like, now we don't need to, we can settle on that. Well, is it like with comic books, because like it depends on the release schedule, but usually like an ongoing storyline, like a Spider-Man storyline, takes up an entire year of publication, but it might be set over the course of like 3 days within his universe. Yeah,
because most come out, say, once a month, and that whole story could be 3 or 4 days. So they the creators kind of stand to the idea that, that's how much time passed in that 6 months or that year or whatever.
Yeah.
That issue. Yeah.
But yeah, I think within the first year of Hellblazer, he has his 35th birthday in it, and 5 years later, he had his 40th birthday in it, and he's continued to age. So I think they put him. Well, Vertigo doesn't exist anymore, but he was like, I think they got him up to like 60 in the comics.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
that's mad.
I think that's what I'd read. And Sting is 70 now. I just searched. So like 10 years ago, they'd have been about the same age. So maybe they're just seeing Sting. Though not in Alan Moore's case, because I think him and Sting are friends now. So like he would have just seen his friend in a train station.
The thing there is like the way he says, you winked at him. Like knowingly winked at him. As in like...
Well, that's what makes it sound like a cosplayer who recognised Alan Moore, but I still don't think there were people cosplaying in 93.
Yeah, I know.
I think Alan Moore is just not the best source, like...
I know, yeah. Like, can you trust your sources?
Well, do you want to hear about some other fictional character encounters? Because this obviously made me go looking. So, bringing it back to Sandman. Its creator, Neil Gaiman, claims to have met the version of Death he created in the series. Death of the Endless is the full name. He claims to have, I think he was served by her, he claims, in a restaurant in London in 1989, just a few days after artist Mike Dringenberg, he's the artist for Sandman, just a few days after he sent him over the character design.
Wow.
Though I read this encounter and I just think, well, this is not unique at all, because you listen to the audiobook, but have you seen Death in the comics, how she's depicted?
No, I haven't actually, because I don't listen to the audiobook, so I don't know what
she's supposed to look like. Picture any girl I ever dated. She's like a pale, attractive goth girl.
Yeah. And
it's 1989 in London, and it's like, that's not weird to see.
He probably just saw a lot of girls that were like of that scene and thought, that's what I think Death should look like.
Exactly.
And then saw her as a waitress and thought, that's exactly what I had in my head, was a girl like that. Like,
well, it's also you've seen what like the character Dream or Sandman. You know what he looks like.
Yeah.
And it's very, very clear that Neil Gaiman himself was the inspiration for Dream's appearance, because he just looks like Neil Gaiman.
It looks like a young Neil Gaiman. Yeah.
So like I like the idea then that like Neil Gaiman's like, I think I saw Death, even though like, well, that's what any goth girl would have looked like then. But also he's walking around London and people are seeing him thinking they've seen Dream from Sandman.
Yeah,
they're just seeing the guy who created it. I don't know why. I just thought that was so funny.
So is there any reports of people seeing Dream around London around that time?
There has to be.
Yeah.
But sticking with that, Dave McKean, who also worked on Hellblazer, but he has a better story of his encounter with Death of the Endless. He claims that while he was traveling to San Diego, while he was traveling to San Diego, somebody died on his plane.
Oh, wow.
And the plane couldn't depart. And so they all had to get off the plane. And as he was waiting to reboard, he saw a girl leave the plane. And he was just like, she looks exactly like Death from Sandman. And she even had like the eye makeup that she has. And then when he got back on the plane, he like walked up and down to like get a better look at her, and he couldn't find her anywhere. So he just concluded, her job was done. So she never got back on the plane.
That's cool.
But now I don't know why he was going to San Diego, but I do have a bit of a problem with his claim because it's San Diego. He's a comic book. Works in comic books. He's going to San Diego. I assume he was going to Comic-Con. And there was probably a Batman and a Superman on the plane too.
I've just Googled how she looks in the comic book. Pretty sure you dated her for 3 years.
closer to 5, I think. But yeah, like she just looks like a goth girl.
Yeah.
But I just thought that they were funny encounters. That last one's a cool story, but I suspect he was on his way to Comic-Con and he just left that part out of the story.
Yeah. But it's a cool idea that someone died and then he saw a girl like that and then couldn't find her. So
it's it's a great story.
That's cool.
But it's just the San Diego part makes me think, oh yeah, there's a reasonable explanation.
Yeah.
Now, I do have one more unrelated to John Constantine encounter, but this one, it's not quite an encounter with a fictional character, but like a scarier event, really, and just an example of life imitating art, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting this fucking weird buzzing in my earphones that really threw me there. I don't know what the hell that was. Ugh. It was like uncomfortable.
I am waiting for you to introduce me to your new blonde trench coating housemate at the end of this podcast that you just have sitting off camera the whole time we've been having this conversation.
That would be an amazing ending. Just get like Gary cosplaying or something. Is Gary done it, John Constantine?
No, I must ask him because I know he has a trench coat.
That's what I was thinking. But yeah, so this is just an example more of like, yeah, life imitating art. So this is actually, so this account comes from Doug Monach or Monach. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I hadn't really heard of him before this. But it's described in a book called Mutants and Mystics, Science Fiction, Superhero Comics, and the Paranormal. So that's where the author of that book wrote about this encounter. So Monich had just finished writing a scene for a Planet of the Apes comic book about a black-hooded gorilla named Brutus. The scene involved Brutus invading the human hero's home, where he grabbed the man's wife by the neck and held a gun to her head in order to manipulate the hero. And just as Doug was finishing up on this scene, he heard his wife in real life calling out like help.
Yeah.
And he got up, walked the length of the house and entered the living room only to encounter a man in a black hood with one arm around his wife's neck and the other holding a gun. And he
holy shit.
And he described it. His words was, "It was exactly what I had just written. It was so immediate in relation to what I had just been writing, and such an exact duplicate of what I had written that I became in an instant altered state. The air in the room congealed, became almost like fog, and yet paradoxically, I could see with greater clarity. I could see the individual threads on his black hood." Yeah, and apparently, so this writer, he had like obviously this is a fucking terrifying scene in general, like, but the fact that he'd literally just been writing, the only difference was this was an actual man, not a Planet of the Apes gorilla man.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently just it had a torturous effect on him where he was afraid to write for months afterwards.
I get that. You'd think you created reality like that.
Yeah. And it affected him for years, as it would. An attack like that would anyway. Everything worked out. Nobody got hurt. They were just being robbed. But yeah, that's a crazy.
That's nuts.
Obviously, like, it's just a coincidence. Like, home invasions happened, and like, eventually one was just going to happen the exact moment somebody was writing about a home invasion. Yeah. But so it's not really as supernatural or anything as the previous, or at least the John Constantine ones.
No, but that's crazy that you would just write exactly what then happened to you, though. You know?
Yeah. That'd be terrifying.
That's terrifying. Yeah.
It's like one of the scariest things you can imagine.
Well, I suppose it has to have happened to somebody because like odds and coincidences and things like that.
There is another one. Well, this isn't really one, but people kind of confused it as being one. William Gibson, the author of the brilliant sci-fi novel Neuromancer, and he's one of the creators of like the whole cyberpunk genre. He tweeted out in 2015, I think Milgram is a character from his books. I think Milgram turned up for a minute today at the casting window of my new book. Older, 2 kids, meticulously groomed. Very nice suit. Wasn't expecting that. Now, people mistook this as Gibson, meaning that they thought he was at a book signing and that like his fictional character, Milgram, came up to him.
Okay.
He said there during casting for my new book. So what he actually meant is like he was trying to create characters, and out of nowhere, a character he created 20 years ago just came into his mind, but as if they had aged in real time.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't actually saying he encountered them in real life, that he was just talking about the fact that like characters you create are always in there somewhere, and sometimes they just pop back up in your subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, way to talk like an artist. Like,
yeah. The only reason I mention it is because the reason people thought that's what he was saying is because he's talked about tulpas in some of his books, I think, but he's talked about tulpas on Twitter before, so people thought the two were related. Because do you know what a tulpa is?
Sorry, no, I don't.
Yeah, so I think I'd heard the word before, but I wasn't sure. So a tulpa is it's a magical creature that attains, that becomes real, essentially, after it's imagined by somebody else. It comes from it's mysticism. I think it's Tibetan.
Yeah.
So a very famous internet example of an alleged tulpa would be Slender Man.
Yeah. So enough people believe in him, they make him reality. Like.
Yeah. Slender Man was like a full urban legend that started as a meme, but then like went so viral that it ended up in books and movies and video games. And
we're probably going to do an episode on it, actually. At some point.
I'd say everything that has been said about Slender Man has been said.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, we could.
Yeah, I don't know.
We need a new
We're trying not to do any of the really obvious stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we done Polybius, but I feel like Slender Man, it's almost like conspiracy. Like, it's almost like going and doing a 9/11 episode of a conspiracy podcast. Like either do that as your first episode, which is like what Gordo done. It was there first because it's like such a big topic.
Yeah.
But like who's coming back and doing like an in-depth deep dive on 9/11 now? Like,
yeah.
But the point is, anyway, Slender Man became so popular that you couldn't really escape it, and people claimed that, or at least callers to shows like Coast to Coast AM claimed he had become real. So it's believed, or some people on the internet believe that he is a tulpa, a thought form that was brought into existence.
Yeah.
Now, looking into tulpas will bring you down. Sorry, were you going to say something there?
No, I was going to say that's one of the theories with UFOs as well. Is that we've created them.
Oh, really? That like they're sort of imagined into existence?
Yeah, the only reason they exist is because we imagine them.
I never really heard it in regards to UFOs. I think Slender Man's kind of the only one I remember really hearing of it being like dreamed into existence. I'm sure I've encountered it in like Stephen King novels before, though.
Yeah.
But looking into tulpas will bring you down some seriously wild internet rabbit holes. Yeah. And I guess now this maybe, if we do an episode on this as a whole topic, a lot of it would focus on Slender Man. That'd probably be the way to do it, because this is crazy, and there's no way we don't have time to go into a fraction of this. So we will have to do an episode on this, because this shit is bonkers. Because as it turns out, there are entire communities out there on places like Reddit and 4chan who believe themselves to be, can you guess, Tulpamancers.
That so they can create.
Yeah, these are like they're practitioners who think they can, who think the tulpas are like sentient and relatively autonomous beings that they can create with sheer will, and essentially making an imaginary friend.
Yeah. Wow. So is the idea that, say there's a blank automaton or unit that's out there that just needs it's like a supernatural being that has no specific features or identity, and then it absorbs the idea and becomes the identity. So it's the physical being, but it has no, like, for example, because it has no identity of its own, like they could be in every room, and like there could be one in a room with you right now, but you couldn't see it or hear it, but it exists until you give it an existence. But it's actually a real physical thing that's just outside the realm of our reality until we bring it into our reality, and then you give it form.
I like that theory. I don't,
rather than them coming out of nothing. You know what I mean? You're giving form to something that exists. Yeah.
I don't think, like, I like that theory, but I'm not sure that's how they see it, because especially when it comes to, like, I guess I'm thinking it because the idea of doing it with fictional characters.
I know what you mean.
But I don't know, possibly that's, well, the thing, like all these communities, they all sprinkle off into different subgroups and that, and I'm sure you can never really put them all into one box either. You know, I'm sure some think that, oh, that part is absolutely ridiculous, we believe this.
Yeah.
But they're still talking about just what I would consider absolutely bonkers things. But anyway, so with these communities, the Tulpamancers, just such a funny word, these communities became very popular with the adult fans of a certain show, a certain children's cartoon. Can you guess who I'm going to talk about here?
No.
An adult fan base of a kids show. My Little Pony.
Oh, of course, yeah. I was just about to say bronies.
So they started discussing tulpas of characters from the show that they were attempting to will into existence and make their imaginary friends through meditation and lucid dreaming techniques. And it will come as no surprise to you that some of these tulpamancers, particularly the ones with the crossover to the adult My Little Pony fans, they have sexual and romantic relationships with their tulpas.
Oh, no way.
Never saw that coming, did you?
No, sometimes you just gotta fuck a pony, you know? Especially the imaginary ones.
Now, this specific breed of tulpamancers are very few, like, obviously, community in their low hundreds, but the actual tulpa, like the non My Little Pony ones, or the non ones that have romantic relationships, they're not small at all. So they're subreddit, and the full title is Tulpas, Intelligent Companions Imagined into Existence. It has 42,000 users.
Fucking hell, that's a lot of people.
And they all seem to believe it. The description of the subreddit is, ever wondered what it would be like to have a mental companion who can think and act on their own? That's what a tulpa is. Discuss tulpas, share your experience with having tulpas, and give advice to fellow tulpa creators here.
Wow. So is it creating a alternative personality, but this is just in your head, as in someone you have a conversation with and they respond? Or are they talking about
that is
bringing a physical being into existence?
They're talking about bringing a physical being into existence. I'd say your first description is probably like what is actually happening, but they're not seeing it that way. They're seeing it as actually creating a physical being that only they can see.
Yeah. Wow.
I had a look through some of the posts, and like it is the people there are very much serious about this stuff. I think we will have to do an episode on that whole world.
Yeah, we'll have to do a deep dive on that.
But it is crazy. Do you think that maybe that's what happened with Alan Moore, that he just created a tulpa?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Because he's into magic and stuff, and he said magic, he was at a magical the time John Constantine called him a cunt, or said any cunt could do it. It was a magical ritual, so...
And do you think then the one he created is the one everyone else has seen?
No, I think maybe because he created one and he told this story, that then maybe other people accidentally created their own, unbeknownst to them, or they just saw Sting.
Oh, yeah. Or they just saw Sting. That's a really good answer to it. Is well, that's what that was kind of what I thought as well when you were talking about, especially when you're talking about when you're telling me the story of that ritual and I'm coming out of, it's like, did he will them into existence? That thought did pop into my head. Because it's a character he's just thought so much about and so in depth that to him, John Constantine was so real that he became real. Yeah. And what an amazing storyline for John Constantine to discover that his whole life, his existence is he's actually came from the imagination of like a writer.
Yeah.
So he really, like, in the world of Constantine in the comic book, like he exists in the world. He has all the interactions he has and stuff. But then he discovers that he's actually only existed for like 20 years, not say 60 years that he thinks he is, you know?
Yeah.
That like that he's a fictional character who's become to real life. That'd be pretty cool.
That's just reminded me. Have you? Well, I think when you were a kid, you watched the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s.
Yeah.
Can you remember when they did the Secret Wars storyline? Or no, it was like it was where Spider-Man from all these different universes have to come together for some reason.
Oh, very vague.
But there's one of them that just, they all have different powers. They're like variants to some degree. But then there's one of them that just, he looks exactly like the main Spider-Man, but he just can't do anything. He's got no powers and he can never help them. And in the end, or so each universe of the Spider-Man is being destroyed, and that's why they have to work together to save it.
Yeah.
But in the very end, it's revealed that in this Spider-Man's universe, he's just an actor on TV.
Oh, I remember you telling me this before, yeah.
And the person who created him is going to like retire the character or something.
Yeah.
And then they go to his universe and it's Stan Lee and the real Spider-Man meets that. It's bizarre. I think it was like...
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I think it was like the last episode as well. But it's kind of like that, I guess, is what I was getting at.
Because they do there's a bit of weird things where in... it's not specific, but there's some Marvel characters would refer to like Superman as a comic book character, and vice versa.
Yeah,
in the DC universe, someone might refer to like Spider-Man or something, you know, and so it's like a weird loop where they're fictional in each other's universes.
Yeah. And it's always weird when I hear like, Superman referenced in a Marvel movie and stuff.
Yeah. And it's strange.
It's a good way to do it, though.
Slightly related, but I sent you today, I don't know if you saw on Instagram, I sent you this thing about the Japanese man who married a hologram.
I saw it. I didn't click it. I just saw the headline.
Okay, yeah. So, because I think it's slightly related, and again, this would be a good standalone episode, but it kind of makes it's so things you imagine becoming real is obviously the one way to do that is with technology.
Yeah.
And so I'd forgotten about this story. There was a man in Japan who married a hologram of like this virtual woman. And apparently he can now no longer communicate with his virtual wife because the software that allowed the interaction is no longer supported, and the man can no longer interact with the hologram with which he had a relationship for years. And I just think it's so sad. Isn't it like, you know, when you update a piece of software you have and you're like, fuck it, I should have kept the old version. It was way better. Or I was able to do this one thing, or I was able to connect like this.
Like Windows 11
device.
not having a drag and drop. Crazy.
Yeah, like whatever, like it is. And then you're like, oh no, I really like that feature, but it's your wife. You can't access it anymore.
I mean, Jesus, how I must read that story, because like, how did hologram technology, like,
yeah, it's just a screenshot of the story. I need to find the full story.
Well, so we're about ready to wrap up, but I would have to ask you. It'd be crazy to finish up without asking.
Yeah,
if you could meet one fictional character, who would it be?
Well, you see, this is where this gets very difficult for me.
All right.
Because I've already met a fictional character.
Oh.
And it's you, John.
I knew you were going to say that.
See, when I was in college, I was a bit lonely and I had no friends. So I invented one.
That's a great.
And here I am, 16 years later. And I do a podcast with you.
So nobody else can ever hear my voice. It's just you talking to yourself.
Well,
you put up a version with just your audio file.
It wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, like people would have to listen to the end for it to make sense. And who's going to listen to a man talking to himself with nobody?
Well, I say this because for a long time there was people like my wife who would easily go like 2 years without seeing you in person. Yeah. But I would always be like going off to meet you to record an episode or going out for a drink or whatever.
Long before we done podcasts and stuff, like you'd be always out on the phone to me, but nobody saw me.
Yeah, she wasn't even sure you existed.
I think it was mainly like at parties or that, because I'd always like come much later. And like, you'd be like, oh yeah, Johnny's coming. And then, like,
so we started the joke that so we started doing at parties where we take a photo of, say, you, me, and someone else, and then we take the same photo, but you're not there in it.
Yeah, so it's how you see it.
Like, so it's like how I see the world, and then how everyone else sees the world. So how I see the world is you're standing there with me in the photo, and then everyone else just sees me by myself.
That was one of my favourite jokes. There was loads of photos on Facebook of you with your arm around an invisible person, and I'd be tagged in them. And then I even had as like my profile picture for like 5 years, just a picture of you with your arm around an invisible person. Oh,
yeah. And there was even one or two where we got it just right. That if I was able to layer the photos, that you were just like slightly faded, and it just looked really weird and creepy, like you were a ghost. So
I forgot completely about that. That was so funny.
So
we had a few.
So maybe you were a Topa. It was a Topa or Topol. Sorry,
Tulpa.
How do you pronounce
Tulpa?
Topa. Oh,
Tulpa. Yeah, like Tulpa, I think.
TUL. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot all about those photos. I used to have one with Darren too, where like I'd take a photo of him. Beside him, we'd both hold up our fists, and then I'd upload it and say, "Oh, met this Olympic legend last night," and people would like it and like pretend they knew who he was. Like, because if you make a fist in a photo of anybody, people always assume it's an athlete.
Yeah, it's brilliant. You did it with my wife at like, I think it was like her 27th birthday or something. And there's a picture of you holding up your fist as if she was like some fighter.
Yeah, some like Irish boxer or something.
So to turn the question around on you, is there any fictional character you'd like to meet?
If I could only pick one, I don't know. It probably would be John Constantine, to be honest. He's a pretty cool character. Yeah, I think I'd actually go with John Constantine. I'm not sure if I would have, if you asked me that question, not knowing any of this stuff.
Yeah, it's a good choice.
Yeah, or maybe a vampire, like Dracula, that have stories.
Yeah. Because he's lived so long.
Yeah, you don't want to meet a fictional character who isn't like in his 20s or something.
Yeah, someone really.
Or maybe Death from Sandman. She's pretty hot, like. Well, what if? Okay, well, if. No, I suppose you answered, but a fictional character that isn't me, would you have one?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if tulpas turn out to be real. I'm not sure if I would will one into existence to be my imaginary friend, because that would be a nightmare. Like having any like tulpa like around you the whole time would. I was going to say would drive you crazy, but no, you were already crazy to have a tulpa. I think.
No, but it would still drive you crazy. Like, I suppose the whole point is if you willed them into existence, then you'd want to have them around all the time.
But we will do a whole episode on them. But yeah, like obviously I don't think any of these people met. I don't think John Constantine is real, just to clarify with people, but I do think it's a fascinating story.
It's incredible.
Do you think, because we've talked about it, will you be thinking about it too much? What are the chances that one of us will think we see John Constantine at some point in the future?
Oh, definitely. It's definitely going to happen now. Because there is, like, I don't want to go down a big long road in it, but there is a little bit of, willpower, and this is one of these things I probably say a lot, is I do think as a species we don't quite understand the full power of our own minds. Yeah. And whether that is creating something physical from nothing probably takes it a bit far, but willing certain things in your life, or having a perception of something that's about to happen, or like stuff like deja vu and stuff. Yeah. A lot of them say it's like, oh, for some reason a memory went through your long-term memory instead of your short-term memory.
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah. But I get a lot of deja vu.
Same, yeah.
Happens to me a lot. And it's... And I find I very clearly remember, but even to the point where like I get deja vu to the point where I might, or I'll have a dream and then like months later it's deja vu. I'm remembering what happened in that dream, and I've had it where I've told my wife about it, say this thing happened in a dream, and then when it would happen in real life I'd be like, do you remember, like I was like, I just had deja vu, do you remember I told you about this dream? And she'd be like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Like, yeah, it's not, I'm not the only one who's experiencing that, that there is. And I think there's just, I think the something to do with kind of metaphysical things. So like the brain works on so many different layers that we don't fully understand or comprehend. Yeah,
and it's like, because you hear about it, it's quite common for people. It happens to people a lot when a relationship ends and when they like can't really get over the person and are thinking about them a lot. They start talking about how like they keep seeing them everywhere. Like they'll be at a party and see them, and like suddenly, they lived 20 miles away when we were together, but I think they're living in like my building now because I keep seeing them in the hall. But like they're not seeing them, they're just like seeing somebody who looks slightly like them, and they're making their brain's making a quick connection. The signals can get crossed in the brain so easily. Like it's
and it could just be simply that.
Yeah, most people just don't understand it. There are illnesses out there where people will just block out certain things. Like they will be looking down a street and they might only see everything that's on the left side of the road. They're just like, that is an actual, like that is an illness. Like, even, like they won't see anything on the left. So like you put their dinner on a plate, they will only see the food that's on the right side of the plate, and the rest of the plate will be white. Like the brain is able to like block that out. And as far as they think and see, only half the plate has food on it. It's bonkers, but it's completely real.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like with the relationship thing, or, you hear parents when they lose a kid, like often like start seeing them in public and stuff. It's a big problem with kids that go missing, being spotted years later.
Yeah, and like the whole thing of like hysterical mothers running up and grabbing like somebody else's kid in a playground and be like, "This is my child," and then they look at the child again. Like, it looks nothing like
but
their
it was
kid.
just one thing that just sent them a signal to the brain.
Yeah. There's a really cool episode of the X-Files where there's this guy who's like an assassin. And
so weird you mentioned the X-Files.
Turns out they somehow, some experimental, like, I think it was like some MK Ultra experiment where they figured out to make him exist in your blind spot. So you can't actually see him. And the way they kept doing it was like,
I don't remember that.
People would be looking, they couldn't see him in a crowd, and he could be like standing, like walking right towards you, and then you'd get like your tear duct would bleed a bit or something because you're like basically you were having like a mini stroke because whatever signal he created as a person, it like just scrambled your brain a little bit, and you couldn't see him. So he wasn't actually invisible. He was just, people couldn't perceive him.
Or
something.
That's
like
class.
And it was really cool. I think Mulder then figured out how to see him, whatever. You had to not look directly at him. You had to look for him in your peripheral vision or whatever it was. Like, But it was really cool. But it just kind of leads into that kind of thing. I must watch that episode
An
again.
everyday version of it that everybody will have experienced would be where like say you have like a black dog and you go in your living room and one day there just happens to be like a black cushion on the ground that wouldn't normally be there. If you see that with the corner of your eye, you'll just think it's the dog. And as far as you will have seen like the shape of the dog, just because that's what you'd normally expect to be on the floor of the kitchen or whatever. And then it's only when you re-look and you see, it's a pillow that fell off the couch. And it's like, how would any sane person mistake that for a dog? But you didn't really. Your brain just...
it's a square.
Your brain just made a fake image in a quick, like, millionth of a millisecond to just make a connection. It's...
Yeah, your brain fills in the gap. It's the same. There's cool samples with text where they leave out loads of letters of words and you read like a paragraph and you never notice the words are missing. Apparently it doesn't really work on dyslexic people. It works on normal people. Because I remember doing a couple of those and I was like, this is a lot of gibberish. What the fuck is this? And then other people are reading going, why, what's wrong with it? And I'm like, now read it again slowly. And they're like, oh, fucking hell. I just realized.
Just the frame rate of film. Like you're just doing most of the work yourself, just filling in the gaps.
Yeah, it's mad.
Or like flash animation's the best example, like where you're seeing like fluid movements, but it's like 5 frames a second. Like,
yeah.
Like your brain just fills in all the blanks. But so the point is, if you've been slaving over a comic book for months writing about a character, you might start seeing them out in public.
Yeah, that's, I think, that was a cool topic.
But I would like to believe John Constantine is out there.
Still waiting for him to walk on camera.